Welcome everybody to today's Penn State Athletics press conference with Vice President for Intercollegiate Athletics, Sandy Barbour, as well as head football coach, James Franklin. Appreciate everybody's time today. Excuse me, appreciate everybody's time today. And we'll start with an opening statement from Sandy Barbour.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate everybody being with us today. Obviously, an exciting time in this roller coaster. Yesterday's announcement by the chancellors and presidents of the Big Ten, which gave us the ability to move forward, is really it's a great decision. It's a great moment for us on a number of fronts. First of all, from a health and safety standpoint, the decision was guided by science, by medicine, by data. As it always has been. Those things have guided every decision that we've made in this conference. I was privileged to have an opportunity to serve on the task force, serve with Jim Borchers from Ohio State on the medical committee, and just appreciate everybody's collaboration and teamwork there. It was pretty special. Secondly, I'm really excited, and I know James is, but excited for our guys, excited for our football student athletes. They've sacrificed a lot to get to this point. I've been proud of the way that they've advocated on behalf of their ability to play. They've advocated for themselves, used their voices, and I'm thrilled that they get an opportunity to prepare to and to play the game that they love. Thirdly, it's always been about putting together a plan and a path forward, and to do whatever it is that is safe and that is recommended by the medical experts. So to put the students, coaches, staff, and our community in a position to do the things as many things as we can from a daily life standpoint during this pandemic. And I believe very, very strongly that that's certainly what we did. And then finally, from yesterday's decision standpoint, it really provides a path for all 31 of our programs to move forward in 2021 and let all of them play the sports that they love. Also of note, yesterday, the NCAA Council did meet, made a number of decisions. They set the championships for the spring, for the fall sports that are moving to the spring, that are moving the championships. They established November 25th as the start of both the men's and the women's basketball seasons. They made Election Day free from practice, free from any what we call CARA, accountable athletic related activities. And they also extended the NCAA recruiting dead period through to January 1. So lots of activity on that front, and I'll be happy to answer questions about it.
We'll now go to head coach James Franklin for his opening statement.
Appreciate everybody getting on. I think, you guys have heard a lot of this stuff's already been covered, but we are excited, because we had an opportunity to be able to get in front of the Big Ten and speak on behalf of our student athletes and their parents. I think that's an important piece, that the feedback that I was getting from our parents as well as the players is they wanted the opportunity to compete. I think what the NCAA and what the Big Ten had done, obviously allowing student athletes to opt out if they weren't comfortable, I think was a very important piece of all of this. But that ones that wanted to compete, being able to have the opportunity to do so. So, from the beginning, I thought, Penn State, specifically Wayne Sebastianelli and Andy Mutton, when it comes to football, really did a good job of being extremely detailed and thorough, and working obviously, with Penn State Medical Center in Hershey as well. I thought they did a really good job, and we tried to keep our parents informed along the way, tried to keep our players informed along the way. It wasn't always perfect because from a timing perspective, we weren't getting the information as quickly as we would all like. But when we did, we were able to get that to them. And at that point, they made it very obvious that they wanted to play. So at that point, it was my responsibility and to partner with Sandy to give us the best chance to do that. So we're excited about it. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be challenging. We're going to have to continue to make great choices. not only as a football program, but also away from the football program, in our behaviors as coaches and as student athletes. But we're up for the challenge and excited about the opportunity. So I appreciate you guys being on, and look forward to answer questions.
We'll start with Mark Brennan from Lions Fight on State.
Thanks, Chris, and thank you, James, Sandy, and Jev, who I see there. I appreciate you guys taking the time today. This question's mostly for you, James, but Sandy, feel free to chime in. I wonder what impact this kind of roller coaster has had on recruiting, kind of going from a spot where it looked like you would be on the sideline, maybe at a competitive disadvantage, to now that you're going to be back on the field in the season.
Well, let me say this. It has had an impact. But let me say this. I want to be clear on this. This class is not done, but up to this point, we haven't gotten it done. We have not recruited up to the standard that we normally have, and I can make excuses. I can come up with a lot of reasons for that, but we haven't gotten it done the way we normally have gotten it done, and there's a lot of factors that go into that. But that's just the reality of it. Moving forward, it's complicated. It's different. Obviously, you don't have official visits. You don't have unofficial visits. You didn't have the spring game. You didn't have spring practices. And obviously where we're located, it's not like we have a bunch of recruits that live within an hour of campus. This is a place you gotta come and see. I'm a huge believer that we are, in my mind, what you think of when you think of the true college town on a postcard. But it's one of those things you got to come and see and appreciate firsthand. People can explain it to you all they want, but you got to come and see it. And part of seeing it, a big part of our experience is our fans and the support that we get, not just for football. You go to a volleyball game on a Tuesday, you go to a wrestling match on a Wednesday, or whatever it may be. I think that those are the things that makes Penn State so special. So it's been different. There's no doubt about it. And we got to be able to adjust, and we got to be able to make some strategic changes and find a way to get it done and be successful. But up to this point, we have not lived up to our normal standards with those things. And I can point out a lot of reasons, but at the end of the day, did you get the job done or not?
And I should have mentioned before, if you can address either Sandy or Coach Franklin with your question, that would be great and very helpful. We'll go to
if you could also turn your cameras on. I've missed some of you. I'd like to see your faces. Come on, Brennan. I want to see them shorts and those legs. Break them out.
We've got Parth Upadhyay from the Center Daily Times. Parth?
Hey, Coach Franklin, this one's for you. You spoke about it a little bit, but just with the reduced practice times, being 12 hours a week, and now kind of having to all of a sudden ramp up, with your guys also in class, what's that going to take for you to get your guys back into the swing of things as if it were late July?
Well, I think the biggest thing for all of us is we just can't look at anything like how we've done it in the past. This is all different. The schedule is going to be different. Camp, if you call it camp, is going to be very different. One of the areas that's probably a little bit, maybe more similar than different than most people's, we normally have school during camp. Our summer school sessions is very different than anywhere I've ever been before, where our guys are usually going to school. Not normally a full load, obviously, like a fall, but it's just going to be very different. And from a practice perspective, from a meeting perspective, leading up to the season is just going to be very different. So I just think we just have to approach it that way. And if you try to keep forcing it back into the normal model, that's not going to work. So it's going to be being creative and thinking outside the box and working not only with the staff and the training staff and the medical professionals, but also our players and talking to them as well to come up with what's best for Penn State football moving forward. I think it's also learning. I watch some of these games and listening to the coaches, what they said after the games and how things worked out, whether that's in the NFL or whether that's college. A lot of the things, a lot of the mistakes and a lot of the issues that we always see early in the season, I think are magnified right now. I think are magnified right now. If you think about us, I know some of the other coaches said it on the Big Ten call this morning. I mean, when was the last time a Big Ten football player tackled anyone? Most of us, we had no spring practices. So there's also an aspect of that we got to get ramped back up to get some tackling in, because you can't go from last season to your first game and never tackle. So there's going to be a time and a place for that as well.
We'll go to Bob Flounders, Penn Live.
Hi, James. Hi, Sandy. It's good to talk to both of you. James, I wanted to ask you, do you think there's any chance, are you leaving the door open for a potential Micah Parsons opt back in? I know that might not be possible, but do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. You always keep the door open, but I think there's obviously a big difference between somebody that opted out a week ago compared to somebody that opted out multiple weeks ago. It makes it more complicated. So it was pretty fun, hitting Micah up right after it happened, and then watching all the fans going crazy. And, so we'll see. We'll see how it all plays out. But it makes it more complicated the longer they've been gone. But I also know that Micah, as well as others, probably wouldn't be in this situation, if it wasn't for, the circumstances we're under. So again, I don't think that anybody, the NCAA, the Big Ten, Penn State specifically, can just kind of put this back in kind of to the same box that it's always been in, because nothing right now is like it's always been. So we'll see. I'm as you know, I'm a positive guy, so I'm going to try to see if there's a way we can work it out and get him back here if it's in everybody's best interest, most importantly Micah's. But yeah, we're always looking. I don't know if you got any eligibility yet. You left Flounders. I don't know if you can help, but if you do, might try to add you.
We'll go to Nubias Wilborn from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette.
Hey, Coach, how's it going, man? And Sandy as well. Thank you, guys. Welcome back to football. Coach, quick question for you. You mentioned earlier the tackling, I guess, building up calluses. I know without giving up game plan, like what are some things you can share about what that plan may look like to get players back acclimated to hitting and going through that course?
Yeah, I think the hitting, I don't want anybody to misinterpret what I'm saying, because the reality is the college football I've been around, there's very little hitting anymore in practice, and that's in every conference that I've been in. And that's the same as the NFL. But yeah, there's an aspect of it. You're going to have to do some of that. You're going to have to do some of that before we get back going. And I think it's magnified, obviously, with not having any of that for spring ball as well. But for us, most importantly, it's getting the guys back out there and getting them in great shape and getting some of the timing and the precision and the passing game and the communication and the chemistry that needs to be built. That's probably the thing that I am most concerned about, is the chemistry stuff. Like, usually I'll have the guys over to my house a lot, whether it's in the house, in the basement, watching games and eating, or whether it's barbecuing, or whether it's taking them to Champs, or whether it's taking them to the bowling alley and just having some fun. Well, when I talked to my trainer, I said, hey, I want to have the freshmen over my house for dinner next Sunday. Are you okay with that? And he said, okay, you can do it, but you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this, and you can't do this. It didn't sound like a whole lot of fun by the end of it. A box boxed meal, no 6 foot, everybody's got to be outside of 6 feet, social distancing. By the end of it, I'm like, this doesn't sound like a whole lot of fun. So that's going to be kind of the interesting thing, is how does it not just football and school without some of the fun things that we all do as coaches to build that chemistry that's important. And that's I think, going to be one of the challenges, Nabias, if that makes sense to you. I think we'll have enough time based on the model that I heard this morning, from a tackling perspective. I think we'll have enough time to get that done.
We'll go with Heather Dinich, ESPN.com.
James and Sandy, if you could both answer this question, I was hoping you could paint a picture of what this past weekend was like for you as you waited for an answer. Both of you, were you at home? Were you in your office? Were you watching ACC football games? And what were your emotions like as you knew the fate of your season was kind of out of your hands and being decided?
James, you want?
I was gonna say start with Sandy. No?
I'm happy to. Well, I was at home, but the truth of the matter is I spent most of my time on both Saturday and Sunday on calls on Zoom calls with the medical subcommittee, with members of the Big Ten staff, and with the members of the Council of Chancellors and Presidents, both on Saturday and Sunday. So that took up a significant amount of my time. So I wasn't pacing. But I'll also tell you that I could, as much as I love it, and you all know I'm a huge fan. I couldn't watch any other college football. There were a few times the TV was on, and I clicked through and found myself confronted with it for a moment or two. But no, I was a Big Ten football or bust. So that's what was going on for me this weekend.
So for me, Heather, it's kind of a combination. It was, I am somewhat relentless and I can't help it. So I harassed Sandy with probably 45 text messages and phone calls about trying to kind of figure out what's going on. Patience is not one of my strengths. That's probably the first thing. I was waiting at home, watching games. Obviously, we were under the impression, I would say, that we would maybe hear something on Sunday, and then, that didn't happen. I made sure that I wasn't having any conversations in here before the press conference got started, but was being very careful about all those types of things. But we were waiting to hear something on Sunday, didn't hear anything on Sunday, and then we were hoping to hear something Monday morning. I did watch college football. Although it was hard the last 2 weekends to watch college football. But I will say I'm somewhat of an addict, so I just can't stop turning it off and watching it. And then I like it because what I do is I'm stealing things constantly. So things that I can use to show our guys. So whether it's a lack of ball security or whether it's burning a timeout. So we're constantly, as coaches, sending these things to Jevin Stone to make cut-ups so we can show our guys. So there's value from that standpoint. But I think the other thing, Heather, that I've said before is I get crushed by the players and the parents, rightfully so. They want to know what's going on. And I think the challenge through this whole process is we didn't know what was going on. And it's hard for my players and my parents to imagine that the head football coach at Penn State doesn't know what's going on. So that dynamic was challenging. And part of Leadership 101 is for me to provide answers to the questions that my parents and my players have. But there's just time that I didn't have the answers. I was waiting to hear. So that's kind of how the whole process went. It was harassing Sandy. It was watching college ball on TV. It was responding to my players and the parents as much as I could with what I knew, and waiting patiently. Well, waiting not so patiently to know what's going on and where we're going.
Peter Terpstra, WTHA.
Sorry, I don't have a camera on my work computer. I promise I I'm presentable. All right, so this is for Sandy first and then Coach. What's the lesson you think you can take from this whole saga of just having football and then postponing football and then bringing it back? Sandy, you can go first.
Yeah, I think Peter, and Peter, you're always presentable, so we assume that. But, I think the biggest one is perseverance, is never say die. Okay, on August 11th, the science and the data and the medicine said one thing. So we went in search to validate or invalidate that. And along the way, there certainly were things that evolved and innovated. Testing is probably the very best example there. So I think the number one lesson is perseverance. I think the other thing that I love about Penn State, I love about our student athletes and our parents, is their passion and their love for this game. We've always known it, but it certainly really shined brightly here under obviously difficult circumstances.
I guess for me, it was, just trying to manage it all. So, I remember, we've been doing split practices. Most teams were back doing full practices. We've been doing split practices this whole time, and social media, there's stuff all over social media, and some of it is accurate and some of it isn't. So, literally we're out at practice with half the team and the other team's waiting. And, by the time we get to the second practice, it's been reported out there on social media that the season's been canceled, and it hadn't been yet. And, just trying to kind of manage all of that. So, I think early on I was over communicating, which is what I normally do. And what I realized is I was putting the staff, the players, and myself and the parents through an emotional roller coaster, because I would tell them what I thought was going to happen, and then it didn't happen. So at some point I just said, look, we're going to focus on the things that we can control. And once the decision's been made, that we'll be as ready as we possibly can be, once the decision's been made. And then we try to get off that emotional roller coaster and just focus on the things that we can control. But it's too important of a topic, and it's too sensitive a topic. So in some ways, I think it was the right thing to do from a leadership standpoint. But I think that also created frustration because the parents and the players wanted to know what was going on. So it's been challenging. But like Sandy said, our parents have persevered, and the players have persevered, and so has the staff. And now we're all trying to kind of navigate this new normal, this new normal that we all have right now.
Rich Scarcella, Red Eagle.
Good afternoon, Sandy. Good afternoon, James. Sandy, this question is for you. Flexibility was a big word when the revised schedule came out back on August 5th. With 9 games in 9 weeks, what happens if a team is unable to play? Is it a forfeit? And what happens? How does the championship determine if teams play an uneven number of games?
Yeah. So I mean, Rich, you're absolutely right. We had built a schedule that had flexibility in it based on the timing now and frankly the calendar. Obviously, we have less flexibility. We have a lot less flexibility at this point. If a team is unable to play, it will not be a forfeit. It just will be a non-game. And the challenge, we don't know. I mean, we're gonna put together a 9-game schedule, obviously, but we don't know how many of those games will get played. If anything, the first couple of weeks of the season have been examples of that for us. So we will have to sit down and hammer out. I don't know whether you call it a tiebreaker, because I don't know with an uneven schedule if somebody plays 8 and somebody else plays 9, or somebody plays 9 and somebody else plays 7. That's not exactly called a tiebreaker. We just have to figure out how we declare our champion.
We'll go with Ben Jones, statecollege.com.
Howdy, good to hear from both of you. You're going to play 9 games this year, and Lord only knows what's going to happen when we start talking about bowl games or what happens in the postseason. Nobody's going to be there. There's so many things that are different about this that, in some respect, if it doesn't go well, you can just write it off as sort of a weird year. What boxes do you want to check off other than the financials at the end of all of this to say this entire exercise was worth it in the end?
Who are you talking
Well,
I was going to say, do you have that directed to somebody in particular, Ben?
I guess I'll ask James, but it's really either of them, I guess. But yeah, fair.
I'll let Sandy go.
oh, thank
No, I'll take it.
Oh, okay. We've already talked about it a couple of times. I mean, it's the opportunity to play for our guys. And frankly, the way we've ended up doing it, it's an opportunity to play for a Big Ten championship, and it's an opportunity to play from a national standpoint, play for a national championship, to interface with the CFP. So those things have been front and center. Is it going to be more lucrative from a financial standpoint than a spring season? We don't know that. We've declared as a conference that there will be no fans other than trying to get families of student athletes and staff members in, which each of us are gonna have to work with our local health department authorities in order to do that. And so I think it goes back to the opportunity to play for championships for our student athletes, play the game they love. And frankly, give our community something to rally around, even if it's only on TV.
Yeah, for me, Ben, it's totally about the players. It's totally about the players. It's an opportunity for some of them, to create value for themselves. It's about them having an opportunity to go, play in the NFL. It's about obviously the opportunity to compete for championships. But it's totally about the players. It starts and ends with those guys, and specifically, the seniors. I think it's all the guys, but to me, it's specifically the seniors, because I think, especially for like a 5th-year senior, I think, the NCAA has made the right decision and said that this year won't count for them. But I just don't know how many 5th-year seniors across the country would come back for a 6th year. So specifically for those guys, it's an opportunity for them to better their chances of chasing their dreams.
Go to Neil Rudell, Altoona Mirror.
Thank you, Chris. Hey, James. This is for Sandy. I'm curious when we might see a schedule. Do the teams have an opportunity to review that, or just have to accept it? And also, is there guidelines on disclosure if a kid does test positive?
Yeah, so we hope that we will have schedules the end of this week. The institutions will have an opportunity to review them, but they're going to be based on principles. And I don't think we're going to have the opportunity to go in and say, we don't like this week or that week or this opponent or that opponent. It's going to have to be based on some principle that hasn't been, that we've agreed upon as athletic directors that hasn't been fully fulfilled in the schedule. So your second question was about test protocols. We will need what the presidents and chancellors have approved is that we need to have certified our list of available players by our chief medical officer to each other, and but those will not be made public. From a Big Ten protocol standpoint. If the university wants to do that, that's up to the university.
We'll go to Audrey Snyder, The Athletic.
Hey guys, thanks for your time. James, this is for you. You mentioned Micah and that possibility. Are there any other guys at this point that you are anticipating opting out? Have they expressed that? And do you kind of have to put a deadline on that and say, okay, here's where we're going, we're practicing, this is it? And are you at 20 hours now? And if not, when do you anticipate that happening in full pads as well?
I actually thought you were asking me if there's any other guys that we're trying to get back, like Saquon and, you know, Apke and those guys. That's where I thought you were going with this, but
if you want to go for it, it's out there for you.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I think in a perfect world, you're right, Audrey. I think you'd like to say, okay, who's in is in. But I just don't know if it's going to be that clean. I just don't know if it's going to be that clean. We're just going to have to be flexible and make the best of it we possibly can. We have kind of moved into a 20-hour week now, but obviously a lot of this stuff we've already kind of had set, so it doesn't change a whole lot for us, except the opportunity to practice on Saturday and Sunday. We have typically in season had Mondays off around here, so we'll kind of get into that routine with our day off being on Monday and being able to take advantage of the weekends a little bit. But no, I don't know if we have any set dates, Audrey. Did I answer all your questions? I think
I had one more in there. Do you know when you guys will be in full pads? Any idea on that?
Sandy, I think the date is the 30th. Is that correct? That you have the.
That sounds right. There, Audrey. There's been a prescribed date. I just don't remember it off the top of my head. Although I might be able to find it here real quick.
Yeah, I think it's the 30th. I think that's when Nubia asked earlier. Yeah, Nubia asked earlier, like, how are we going to ramp up the hitting? I think right now the date that we're getting from the Big Ten is the 30th.
It is. That's what it is.
Thank you.
Yep.
Go to Mark Wogenrich, SI.com.
You're muted, Mark, or your sound's not working. You don't look like you're muted, but the mic's not working.
We'll try again. Wogie. All right.
Your mic is not muted, but we can't hear you.
Anything now?
Oh, now we got it.
All right. Three mics going. For Sandy, you had mentioned no fans in the stadium. What about outside? How do you plan to address people who might just want to show up and tailgate?
We will not be allowing tailgating in our parking lots and on campus property.
We will go to Joe Giuliano, Philadelphia Inquirer. Joe?
Okay.
Joe? Got you now.
Okay. Hey, thanks, Sandy and James, for doing this. James, this question's for you. You seem pretty relaxed. You're joking with us. After all the pressing and pushing and your countless Zoom calls and like you said, not having the answers that you needed for parents and players, do you feel like a weight's been lifted off of your shoulders?
Yeah, the way I would describe it, Joe, is I took one weight off and put other weights back on. But I guess I'm thankful and appreciative that we have this opportunity. And then I'm just trying to stay as open-minded and creative. I think where the frustration comes is when you try to make this year like anything you've experienced before. It's not, and I think sometimes it's good for me to talk to other coaches and talk to other colleges and NFL coaches that I've talked to, and that we're all dealing with challenges and trying to learn from some of the other conferences and trying to learn from some of the other programs that maybe are further ahead, in this learning curve than we are. I think those things have been valuable and helpful for me. But yeah, Joe, it has been a battle. And I think for me, we're so used to our routine of how the year goes, probably the same way for you guys in the media. And for that to be disrupted was challenging. So to kind of get some normalcy back is great. but that normalcy has just come with a new set of challenges.
We will go to Elton Hayes, CNHI.
Hey, Coach. Hey, Sandy. Thank you all both for doing this. I hope you're well. Coach, this question is for you. You mentioned before I guess, how things are so unconventional right now. What was once normal isn't. Yesterday, we learned that it was going to be a 9-game format season over the course of 9 weeks. That's, obviously going to be challenging on not only yourself and your staff, but on the players. What are ways you're going to kind of go about, or what are ways you kind of foresee minimizing that grind on the players and your coaching staff during this, just with having everything so condensed and packed in?
Well, I think one of the advantages of this year not counting from an eligibility standpoint is you don't have to worry about the redshirt guys only playing 4 games. So it opens your roster to allow you to play more people, which I think you may need based on opt-outs, you may need based on quarantine or whatever it may be. But to your point, not having a bye week and going 9 straight weeks, those things help. Those things help. But I do think, Elton, to your point, is it's also the thing that I talked about before is being able to do some of that team building stuff and some of the stuff where you go paintballing and stuff like that, where just to have some fun to break up the grind. And it's just hard to do that right now under the normal constraints. But I just think for me, I'm just trying to kind of look at it very differently than I've looked at any year before, and just try to be as flexible as we possibly can and adjust and understand this year is what this year is. And hopefully at some point we can get back to how we're used to doing things. But the reality is we're going to learn some stuff by this as well. By going through this experience, we're going to learn something about our teams, about ourselves, about how we run our organizations that should be different next year, even if we do get back to normal.
Before we move on to our next question, I think I might have cut Sandy off a little bit before she finished answering Mark's question. So Sandy?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I would be remiss to not add to the question about folks gathering outside the stadium or tailgating is, look, this has always been about health and safety. We're returning to an ability to play because we've determined that the play can be done safely. We've made a decision as a conference not to have fans out of an abundance of caution. And we're really asking our Penn State Nation to cheer us on, have small home personal pod watch parties, but do it safely. Please don't have. You're not going to be able to do tailgating on the campus as much as we would love you to be able to do this. Again, this has always been about getting back to some normal activities, but while doing it safely. The things like social distancing and masks and hand washing are still the things that we know work as it relates to this virus. And we would ask that obviously we want you to continue to back the guys, but do it in a safe and responsible manner. And we'll all be back together as soon as we possibly can. So thanks, Chris, for the opportunity to follow up on that, as well as lots of things that we will be doing inside the stadium so that our faithful, our fans, the Penn State Nation, all have an opportunity to be a part of, like all of us have been doing virtually instead of in person this season.
We'll go to Nate Bauer, Blue White Illustrated.
Hey guys, how are you both doing?
Hey, Nate.
Great, Nate.
This is for both of you, and it's kind of localized a little bit, but just given the testing numbers that are coming in to the State College area and the Center County area, does that heighten your level of concern? And for James, obviously you've had some success with football and COVID so far, but is there any system that you can put into place in terms of raising accountability, for your players, whether it's, team leaders, and are you any more concerned I guess, about some of the younger classes being able to avoid that off-campus stuff.
James?
Oh, I thought the first question was for you. Okay. Yeah, I think, obviously every positive that we get in our state and specifically in Center County is a concern. Obviously we want it to be zero. I will say this, Nate, I've been kind of impressed and surprised driving around campus and driving downtown, the consistency I see in people wearing masks. But yeah, I think the accountability is gonna need to come from not just the administration and the coaches, but the players. And I know Pat Fryermuth, as well as a number of guys, brought up yesterday that that the players are gonna have to police the players as well. And it's no different than anything else. We all make mistakes. You go to walk out of your house and you forgot your mask. Your teammate or your roommate or someone needs to say that to you, and we're going to have to look out for each other and remind each other to make good choices. But I think Nate, I think the other thing that you realize is the Big Ten has got very, very stringent protocols. I think it's safe to say probably the most stringent protocols in college athletics and maybe even professional athletics. So the reality is, if we're not following the rules, you're going to be out, for a large number of days and miss not only practices but games as well. And nobody wants that, especially in a reduced season.
Yeah, Nate, on the bigger picture, I mean, it goes back to what we were just talking about. The Big Ten making a decision not to have fans for that very reason, in terms of not attracting large crowds to our communities. So there's certainly some things we can do organizationally accountable, as well as James's comments about individual accountability. And that's individual accountability for myself and each of our head coaches and our staffs and our student athletes. And I'll tell you, although we did have, as school kind of got underway, we had a couple of weeks of unusually high test results within athletics for us. We're already seeing those signs of it coming back down. We've taken steps around both accountability and education. Because let's face it, probably the key to this with our student athletes and with this age group is that they understand and believe the why behind why is it important to wear a mask? Why is it important to social distance? Why is it important to not be in large groups? And so we continue to evolve with this. James and I have both said it a number of times here just in the last hour. Nobody's ever done this. We continue to learn, and I think we continue to get better. But I'm really proud overall of how our student athletes have done. As you know, for the first 10 weeks of this, from the first part of June to the middle of August, with the 6 or 7 teams that we had back that included our football program, we had great success from a testing positivity standpoint. And I believe strongly we're headed back to that.
Tyler Donahue, Lines 24/7.
Hey, James. Hey, Sandy. Sharing a home office, so it says Hillary Goldsmith under my picture here, so don't mind that. Nice to speak with you in more positive circumstances. James, question for you, going back to recruiting. The NCAA extending its emergency dead period yesterday through December. That pushes it beyond the early signing period. Do you agree with that decision? How are you adjusting with the absence of official visits? And would you and your staff feel comfortable with signing a recruit who has actually never physically been to campus?
Yeah, I guess, again, what I would say, Tyler, is if you're comparing it to a normal circumstance, a normal situation, no. But again, nothing about this is normal, and we got to make the best of the situation, that we're dealt. And we have to make that decision, and the recruit and their family has to make that decision. One of the things that I know I'm going to talk to some people about when appropriate, and try to get me and Sandy on the same page with this, is that say we sign a recruit and he comes in at mid-semester before going on an official visit, I would still like to be able to bring his parents in on an official visit after he's already signed. I think that's something we ought to talk to the NCAA about, because you'd like to be able to still provide some of that experience for him and his family. But to me, it is what it is. I don't know how you can justify bringing somebody into our community or onto our campus, for a recruiting visit when they haven't been tested and they haven't quarantined and they haven't done all the things that we do. I don't know how that's fair to the student athletes that we have here, and I don't know how it's fair to them as well, to the recruit. So, and then what do you do with hosting? Who hosts the student athlete? And there's just so many challenges and problems to come with it. And I know it's not ideal, but the one positive is we do live, in a day and age where you can get so much information off the internet, and you're able to experience so many things virtually, that it helps. But none of this is ideal, Tyler. And we're going to have to sign some kids that we haven't had on campus, and some kids and families are going to have to sign and commit without ever seeing a place.
So with Adam Rittenberg, ESPN.com.
Hey, James and Sandy, thanks for taking the time. Sandy, questions for you. You were obviously in those meetings with the small group of presidents and then all the presidents over the weekend. Just what stood out to you about those meetings and just their initial concerns, and then how those were ultimately eased by you and Dr. Borchers and everybody else on that medical committee? What were those meetings like?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, their openness to the information, openness to reversing the decision. Notice I didn't say change their mind, because I think if having been presented with the same information, their mind would have been in the exact same place. But as I said before, I think the testing protocols, the availability of testing, the different kinds of tests. I think I said it yesterday, from the time we started looking at the point of care rapid daily antigen tests, originally there was one company that we thought we could access. And by the time we went to the chancellors and presidents last weekend, it was at least 4. And so I think there was a lot of information that had changed. The medical experts needed to talk through the cardiac protocol and frankly come up with you heard the term yesterday, an abundance of caution. Out of an abundance of caution, put together a protocol that would meet or exceed the chancellors and presidents' need for some certainty around long-term health considerations.
We have time for a couple more questions before we need to let Sandy and James go. We'll go to Dave Jones, Penn Live.
Hi, guys, and thanks for talking.
Dave.
I hope I didn't miss this when Barry was talking about the schedule. And I know Gene Smith 3 weeks ago or so was talking about the possibility of domes. Now we're talking about games in early December. Have domes been crossed out? And how do both of you guys feel about that? The logistics of them, the upper Great Lakes are not exactly Bermuda in first couple of weeks of December.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Dave, we've crossed into a different part of the calendar than we were talking about originally. There is a little bit of overlap, and certainly, I would say in the weeks that we are normally playing at home and playing in our home venues anyway, those are certainly going to be targeted for our home venues. And I think at the other extreme, that weekend of December 19th, I think we're certainly looking at the possibility of domes, and with our championship game, our Big Ten championship game, as it's traditionally held in Indianapolis. There are probably a few weeks there at the end that are up for debate.
So we're talking about maybe in December before the final week, it's possible you could use domes, right?
Yeah, the schedule's not done yet, so I think there's a lot that's possible.
Okay. James, do you have any thoughts on that, on domes?
Well, you had mentioned Bermuda. Did you say Bermuda?
I would be in favor of that, yes.
Yeah.
I don't think that's on the table, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the way I understand it is like Sandy mentioned. I think when we were talking about playing later in the calendar year, it was all about domes, and right now we're talking about being back on campuses. But that'll still be determined. We're waiting to hear what the schedule is going to be. We had a Big Ten call this morning with all the head coaches, and we're all waiting to hear what that's going to be, what the schedule is going to be. But I think we're all kind of anticipating it's going to be back on our campuses for the 8 games.
For the 8. Okay, thanks.
And our last question will go to Donnie Collins, Times Tribune. Donnie?
Hey guys, good to see you again.
Hey, Donnie.
Hey.
Questions for Sandy, and I'm just wondering about the clearly this is the first step on a path toward getting all sports back. You mentioned that earlier, but what are some of the roadblocks to having fall sports in the fall this year, and how aggressively or conservatively you guys pursue that as a conference? And do you see it as a possibility, a likelihood?
For the other fall sports?
Yes.
Yeah, I think the biggest impediment is that the NCAA has now moved the championships to the spring. I think that's the biggest thing. And how do certainly there are other conferences that are playing soccer and field hockey and volleyball this fall. But what's the interface with those contests as it relates to a spring championship? So I think that's the biggest question there.
Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, James, for your time. Appreciate everybody tuning in.